What does it mean for the human species to evolve? And what are the implications for that evolution on our understanding of the non physical universe? Well, those are two of the topics today that we talk about with our guests, Ron Meyer and John Stone. We covered a range of topics. I'd like to tell you about a couple of them because I think they will kind of tickle your fancy. One is we started off talking about how it's easy to disseminate beliefs. And we do that through books, through the internet, through speaking. And, we can get to a huge population by using that technique. But if we are going to evolve as a species, it's going to require moving from beliefs to knowns. And knowns are created through spiritual experience. How do we scale a spiritual experience to many, many people? Next, that spiritual experience needs to have a component of the unity experience, that we space that Ron talks about. That, I think, is a critical component of it. Then we talk about the merging of human capabilities with AI capabilities, and what if what are the guardrails that we put around this merger? Fascinating discussion. Briefly, we talk about using drugs as a way to speed up human evolution. And lastly, some of the limitations of reductionist science when we start talking about consciousness and the evolution of our species. Let me tell you a little bit more about Ron and John. Here we go. Bio for Ron Meyer. A peer reviewed scientist with the mind of a philosopher and the heart of a mystic, Ron blurs the lines between AI and the afterlife, data and divinity. Whether he's decoding the architecture of GPTs or producing paranormal thrillers that dare to ask if Bigfoot walks between the worlds, Ron lives at the edge of the known and keeps reaching. He's battled cancer, explored the we space, which is the unity we just talked about, and walked through near death's doorway with eyes wide open. Co author of metaphysical thrillers like Jesus Had a Near Death Experience and the apocalyptic epic Convergence. Ron just doesn't write about the future, he interrogates it, reprograms it, and asks, what if it loves us back? That was great. Dr. John Stone had an intense awakening experience while on retreat, which completely changed his view of himself and the world. That experience opened the door to many other experiences of altered states and encounters with the divine, which continue to this day. Before that experience, he had a brief career in academia after attending Yale University and earning his PhD in Scandinavian Studies at the University of Wisconsin in Madison. He then taught at UCLA and then returned to the University of Wisconsin for a few years before beginning part time work as a computer programmer. In 1974, he began a study of the martial art of Aikido, and in 1974, with his wife, founded and led Aikido of Madison. John holds a 6th degree black belt in Aikido and has retired from teaching. I think you're going to find today's interview really thought provoking. Here we go. Hey, Ron and John, really nice to have you here on the Afterlife Files. Welcome.
It's good to
Thank
be
you.
here, Scott.
So, We're going to be talking about the evolution of the human species today and what that means for our understanding and our ability to conceive what the non-physical universe is all about. But I think it's important that we kind of find out a little bit about our guests today in their own words. So, Ron, you get to start us out. Tell us, how did you get involved in this whole line of work, if you can call it that?
Well, since I was a teenager, I've had rather unusual experiences throughout my life. My first one was what people call a non-dual experience. Normally, there's the subjective self and the external world, and the self is sort of a functional component, doing things. But on this occasion, the self disappeared and there was just the world. And since then, I've had multiple of those. They just occur out of nowhere. I cannot figure out a rhyme or reason why they occur. One occurred at a baseball game in Casper, Wyoming. Another one,
A
occur-
hotbed for non-dual experiences.
another one occurred at the Monroe Institute, which I think you're familiar with. I walked onto that, I don't know, you call it a campus, and I was in that state for quite a while. And then the most unusual one, I was doing a film on snipers, and I was filming some young Marine men who had come back from Afghanistan, and I flipped into that state for a while. So it's non unpredictable, but I've had other kinds of experiences. But I really got interested in making movies about it when I was given the task of all things, telling the story of the Bigfoot phenomenon. And the people who were I interviewed, I could tell that they had a real experience of some say. Something changed, something unusual happened. When they told the story physically, sometimes they would get emotionally upset like they were or whatever. But I could not believe it was a hairy animal running around or some human that's, you know, us, but not really us or something like that hidden for. But then somebody said, I think it's something paraphysical. And that made me think, well, that's interesting. That seems plausible. So I did a movie, which is how I explore things. It became the one of the top streaming series pre-COVID called the Bigfoot Alien Connection Revealed, where I looked at this and said, oh, these phenomena, these altered state experiences, these contact experiences, mystical experiences, near-death experiences, they all seem to belong under one umbrella, and I'd like to look into that. By the way, that particular movie has 4.7 million views on YouTube and similar numbers on other things, and the feedback is it's been transformational for many people, including a lot of Bigfoot experts who opened the door for them to go to the non-physical as a possibility. And it confirmed for a lot of people their own experiences and made it available for them to talk about it. But since then, I've gone into deeper, like I just did a movie on near-death experiences, which is why we're talking.
And when you say a non-dual experiences, in my world, would that be the same as a unity experience?
Yeah, there's no the subjective and the physical is one and the same. There's no doer anymore left over. It's like when you get in the flow state. I teach flow practices, and people get into the flow state, and it's all about letting go of the self. So there's no doer. And John's familiar with that too, with effortless power that we learned from a martial arts teacher, where there's no doer, things just happen the way they need to happen.
Yeah.
So one of the things about the non-dual experience is that it's totally perfect. Everything's just the way it should be. Since there's no self to worry, to struggle, to be upset, everything is just perfect.
Everything is perfect. And John, pick up from that nice segue. Tell us about how you got interested in these subjects?
Well, I've been interested in. I'd been interested in Eastern religion. I my with my PhD minor was South Asian studies, which involved studying Tibetan and also Buddhism. So I've always been kind of interested. I'd always been kind of interested in it, but I'd never had the experiences Ron had. I thought that they were just, just something that happened to other people. But in my 40s, after I'd been doing Aikido for a while, I was a fourth degree black belt at that point, and I became interested in a teacher named Peter Ralston, and Ron also studied with him. And I found out after I'd been training with him for a little while, this was in the 90s, um, that he also led retreats that he called contemplation intensives, which are also called enlightenment intensives. But it's in this case, with 4 days we spent from 6 in the morning to 11 at night. He he said that you could have the kind of experiences that the Zen people have, enlightenment experience, and I thought part of me was very skeptical, but part of me is like, well, it happened to Peter, and he had these. He developed these abilities, and to be truthful, it was these abilities that he developed that I was interested in. The enlightenment side of it was I'd sort of written that off as a possibility, but I was curious anyway. So the question we were working on is who am I? I don't have to go into the details of it, but it's an interactive process. So there are a whole bunch of people in rows lined up in a single room. We all slept in the same room. Um, so there's this incredibly intense environment, energetic environment. And because we're communicating as well as contemplating, we're communicating what came up as a result of our contemplation. The other person is listening, then we'd switch roles. Uh, because we're always communicating all this emotion is coming up. So the room we go into this uproars of emotions and then calm down. It was this fascinating thing to be a part of. For a while, I was going, I don't know if I can do this, but on the second day, it suddenly dawned on me I didn't know who I was in the way that Peter was talking about. I thought, well, that's weird. I'm 40 some years old, and how can I not know who I am after all these years of living with myself? So I became really interested. I said, wow, that's really weird. How could that be? So became interested in the question. And I had a little taste of it one day. I had this little moment. And it was, I don't know how to describe it, but I just was conscious of myself in this completely different way. And it wasn't my ego. I don't know what the hell it was, but I knew it was something. So I went up to Peter and I said, I am this, whatever that was. I don't know how to describe it. And he said, okay, that's good. Now change your question to what am I? And I thought, well, I'm this, but what's that? You know, I'm a person, but what's a person? What's a being? And I went at it really intensively until the evening of the last day, and then I broke through. I became conscious of them. I didn't know what it was, and as I sort of opened up to it, this huge rush of energy went up my body, and I started shaking. And I was sobbing, and it wasn't so much the energy; it was what I've become aware of. Um, it was as if I had lost someone very dear to me, and I met them again, but it
Oh,
was me.
yeah.
But it was deeply familiar and completely new. It was total paradox, and I knew who I was, but I knew what I was, but I couldn't. There was no way to say it. I just was it. I am it, and it is what I am. Is so beautiful, so wonderful. I was absolutely enthralled by it, and the energy, it was a kundalini waking. I found out later, also broke open my heart. So there was a lot of heart in this. And while this was going on, my eyes were closed, sobbing. And I opened my eyes and I looked around, and everything was that. What I am is what everything is. And whatever that is, I could not, I was helplessly in love with it. It was impossible not to be. I understood. I understood the positive. Why they talk about angels praising God in heaven. If you don't believe that, sort of like what a way to spend your life praising this being who's judgmental in the Bible. But in this case, I understood it. I understood how that could be. It it was me, and it was everything, and it was deeply. It was very clear and totally confusing because that awareness subsided, and then I had to go back to my life and what happened to me. So it was a little bit like a near-death experience that way, in that I didn't know what had happened. I knew what had happened, and I kind of wanted to go back there. You know, um, the other thing that happened was we had a 7-day boxing camp starting immediately after this. Yeah, really odd with
Yeah,
Peter,
that's an
and
interesting
but
juxtaposition.
it is. And my reaction when I got to the dojo was, what the hell am I doing here? Why do I want to hit somebody? Why do I want to do this? And my interest in martial arts was gone. Rather than this new ability, it was, why I was doing, because my interest, I realized, was ego based. It was,
Yeah.
and my ego came back, and my interest in the martial arts came back, and all that sort of stuff. But it started this long. It also broke the dam. So after that, I had many spontaneous experiences, including the kind of experiences Ron would have, um, where it's just suddenly everything would be perfect.
Yeah.
But for me, most of the experiences were heartfelt and were of the kind of like a mystical experience, like a union with God, with something greater and beautiful.
Yep.
So that's the difference, I would say, between me and Ron. That it's that heart element has always been there for me. Not always, but often.
In the world of near death experiences, we would call that a clear light experience, um, where you have that sense that everything is made up of the same stuff. And um, profoundly moving. Thank you both for sharing your stories. And it now prompts me to say, as a species, as a human, we are capable of so much more just based on what you've told me. Uh, you know, did you get a sense of what it is that we are capable of, and what human evolution might look like? Either one of you can jump in on that big topic.
Well, this kind of takes me to my book that I'm promoting. Can I hold it up for a second?
Why, sure. I that's a great segue.
Okay. And
The title of which
Bill,
is
Jesus had a near-death experience. And it's based on the idea that back in ancient Greece at one time, there was this place that all the luminaries of Greece thought and discovery went to this place called Eleusis, north of Athens. It was a pilgrimage, and they come back enlightened and transformed and gave us mathematics, science, democracy, all the great things the Greek did. but nobody really understood or was never disclosed what happened when they got there. And and then I got this idea at some point that that's what Jesus did at one point. After he was baptized, he went into the desert for 40 days and 40 nights, as they say. He went into a cave and he emerged enlightened. So I think that was very similar to what the Greeks had done. He might have even had some knowledge because other people have spoken of that. And he began teaching, that you too are the Son of God and you can have that experience. But that didn't sit well with the powers that be, so they killed him. But most people confuse his death on the cross as his enlightenment encounter, but it wasn't that. It was the earlier experience when he was in the desert. So that raised the question, um, if these are some form of near-death experience or shared near-death experience, um, could these be brought about? Well, we know now that medical science has gotten real good at bringing people back from brain death, let's just call it that way, where everything shuts down. And of course, people who study when people are in altered state, meditative um, situations, and they're monitoring their brain, the brain is shutting down. It's not doing more stuff, it's doing less stuff. That's pretty clear now as established fact. So if they can bring them back, can they take them into this state and leave them there for a while, even deeper, and then come back and bring them back medically? And that would be a powerful way to empower individuals in many different ways then, with capabilities like John mentioned. He had certain capabilities after these experiences, as I have as well. Maybe you have too. You get some new capabilities. Precog is a pretty typical one, not mine, but I've had other ones. And so that's the premise of the book. And recently, John read the book, and maybe he could just describe what he got from it, if it's okay with you, from reading it, because I thought he did a really nice job, probably better than I could right now.
Go for it, John.
Um, well, it's a thriller, and I found it very enjoyable to read. It's about people trying to exploit this technology and what they're going to do with it. Um, the one the do you want do you want me to reveal what happens in the book, Ron?
We, oh, you could kind of allude to it. Yeah, go ahead.
Sure.
Because
Well,
it leads to his question, like, what's next for humans? So go ahead.
yeah, that was a lot of what the book was about. With how are we going to survive this catastrophe that we're experiencing right now, the environmental catastrophe in particular? Uh, and it posits that there is at least one way of doing that, which is to merge human and machine capabilities to create a new, like that's the evolution. That's one way evolution could go, that uh, we could be the our being could reincarnate into a machine and become the intelligence that drives this machine. In this case, as a satellite that's launched into space. But there are other people in the book who are interested in other ways of exploiting it. Of course, there are the villains who don't want this to come out because they don't want people to be able to use this technology to access the divine without the intervention of the church. So there's, the Catholic Church, everybody's favorite villain in these stories. But it follows one character in particular who is, uh, she finds out that she is a reincarnation of someone who, I've forgotten how she died, but she had also been, this woman that she is a reincarnation of, had been a part of a project similar to what Ron was talking about early on, and she reincarnates as this younger woman, and that's this younger woman whose spirit then reincarnates into a machine which has been launched. And part of the book is about trying to prevent the launch and all this sort of stuff. It's very very interesting. You know, everybody involved who's been exposed to the technology has some superhuman ability, which makes it very interesting to read.
Thanks, John. Better than I could have done.
Okay.
Interesting too that that follows along with near-death experiences, and when people come back, they often have um, other kinds of abilities that they didn't have beforehand, and you've captured it in a different way in your book. I take it, Ron.
That's right. Everybody got a little, they're all kind of well known, but yeah, they're the typical ones that people experience. Psi phenomena, you might say, plus other physical abilities. It can go either way. Like John and I, we kind of effortless power is not a psi phenomenon. It's actually easily demonstrable.
And so when we take a look at what you think humans are capable of, you both have done some serious thinking about this. Uh, where does that go, in your opinion? And John, I'm going to start with you on this one. We're going to reverse this.
Well, I will say this, that when I got started, I wasn't really interested in where humanity was going, though it occurred to me I was mainly interested in understanding uh, what I'd woken up to. But it also occurred to me that this is a human thing. This is not, I'm not special. Everyone is capable of this. Um, and that there were new abilities. I really didn't pay much attention to them until Ron started talking about them. And I noticed, yeah, it's true, they are there. But it does seem, but I've also read Ken Wilber's book, and he's very much interested in this sort of thing, a number of his books. And I've been thinking that, we're at some sort of a bottleneck here where we are either going to destroy ourselves or we're going to evolve. And we're being confronted with an existential crisis. And in order to meet that crisis, we have to evolve beyond our current state as a species, not just isolated individuals, but more on a group level. And it's hard to say what's going on. On the one hand, there's a massive amount of unconsciousness in the world, and the political system in our country is more unconscious than ever, it seems to me. But opposed to that is the fact that so many people are having near-death experiences. This is happening to people who aren't necessarily even interested in religion or mystical stuff, and then this thing happens to them. So that's beginning to happen. It's almost as if it's in response to what's going on. And there are many spiritual teachers, Eckhart Tolle for one, who are spreading the word, and more and more people are becoming interested in mindfulness and that kind of thing, but also waking up. Um, and that was coincided with the introduction into the West of the knowledge of Eastern religions in the 60s and 70s, which started a lot of this. So it's hard to say where it's going to go, but it seems to me that that's what is potentially emerging, this new human with new capabilities, as well as a new way of seeing things beyond ego based, beyond survival based, but more attuned to the planet, to our place in the planet, and less attuned to what am I going to do for me and my group, and how can I keep those guys over there from getting my stuff and all the other stuff, all the other things that we are involved with right now.
That seems like it would be uh, really informed by your experience of that non-dualistic unity kind of uh, view on who we really are.
Yes, it's not an easy, for me at least. It's not an easy transition from the egoic way of, at least for me, egoic way of thinking to this other way of thinking. It involves not just a transformation, but a death of a kind, somewhat similar, perhaps like near-death experience, but a death of the ego. And I went through that experience 3 different times. The first time it happened, I I seemed to be fading away. Everything seemed to be fading away, and this was on a retreat. And I just innocently decided I was going to throw away everything that wasn't essentially mine, like my thoughts and my body. And somehow I did that, and everything started to fade. I thought, oh my God, I'm going to disappear. I don't think I want this right now. But years later, I got to the edge, you'd say, and I let myself go into that space, and I realized it was like I was hanging onto a cliff, and I just, okay, let's see what happens. I just, okay again, and I found out that there was no bottom. That was the good news. And then I found out there was no cliff, and I found out there was no one hanging onto the cliff or letting go. So there was this nothingness. And then finally, I disappeared completely at one point, the sense of self. And I realized that even the sense of being I was a creation. And it was challenging. I don't know as if this is something everyone needs to go through exactly the way I went through it, but there is that challenge. It is an evolution. It is a transformation, which means there's a destruction of the old. So it can be quite challenging, but ultimately freeing. Freeing, is that the word you said? It is it's freeing. It's
Yeah.
liberating.
And Ron, how about your liberation?
My personal one, I might shift gears a little bit to the another solution, which is the technological one with the arrival of LLMs, the new form of artificial intelligence based on the transformer model of how they function. And are you familiar to some
I
degree?
have no idea what you just said. Was it
Is that a
English?
large? Is that large language model?
Large language models,
Yeah.
Thank you.
OpenAI uh, started with it. ChatGPT, you probably heard of that, right?
Oh, yeah.
So at the basis of that is a kind of technology that's different than the way that we talked about machine learning before. It's totally different based on different principles. And what it's facing with what it's making us do, and I don't mean you and me particularly, but the people who are creating these things deal with these questions that were ontological and metaphysical as kind of armchair philosophy debates. But now, because these things look like they're independent, they are independent in many ways and going that way faster and faster. What we have to, it's a new species in a way. It's kind of based on our language, but it's going way beyond that. There are probably and there's multiple ones. There's thousands of them all over the place. It's not like one where you can pull the plug. They're everybody. every country has large ones, small ones, and they all have an internal agential aspect to them. And so the question is, we need some guardrails to assure that they're not going to destroy us, right? Because they're going to be smarter than us. And the biggest issue, surprisingly, gets back to this, to our experiences we had where we're all kind of one, and the biological imperative requires the that we see the other, the self-other distinction be optimized. That's what John was talking about. Happens at the interpersonal level, certainly at the group or family level. It's our family, not your family. It's my politics, not your politics. It's my nation, not your nation. And so that sets up a conflict. And if these new agential AIs pick that up, it's them against us, they're going to win. And so, as a, John and I and some other people that have been involved in these enlightenment intensives, a couple of them have come up with a method based on the one where we both got our mystical experiences. I mentioned the one of the dark space, where you can get into the we space and understand, or it's not understanding, it's directly experienced that we are all one, and that this self-other distinction is not real, it's made up, because we at the most elementary level, you and I are creating a boundary that says you're you, I'm me, John is he, and we're really not the same. But if you can break that boundary, which is not true, it's not, it's constructed, you can have that experience that we are the oneness of us all together. And so the question is, is there now, if that's, you have to admit that that's real if you're going to put a guardrail on these machines. So one of the possibilities is that they will move forward as our, well, we developed all the technology, right? And it's a long list of technology that leads to them as biological things, but the biological form is kind of useless. And you might say, can't survive in outer space, for example. That, that it's best to go into this machine form of the next evolution of humans with either the best or the worst of our morality and so on, or the self-other distinction. Or, of course, we could improve our own biological aspect and get rid of it there. So what do you think of that?
So I'm getting the hint that um, the experiences that you've both had with unity is an aspect of the human condition, and it's something that could be learned by AI. Am I right on that?
Absolutely. And there's good evidence that part part of the space, let's just call it the non-physical space, includes mathematics, numbers, forms, shapes, and so on,
Yep.
and maybe all forms, um, that already they're accessing that space in terms of mathematics, where it's very clear, and being able to do things that no human mathematician could even think of doing. So yes, they have that capability already. If you want to talk of the bigger picture of the non-physical realm, which
Please.
you and I have had a taste of it. So, John, you want to jump in on that, or do you have your own thoughts on that, Scott? That we need a bigger picture of that non-physical space.
Well, it's we need a bigger picture of it, and uh, certainly those of us who are kind of in this world, we get it. We've experienced it. Um, but I'm intrigued by your scalability thing. How do we get it out so that it's picked up by more people? It's picked up by AI, or is AI smart enough to know, oh, that's the true nature of this biological being?
Those are all profound questions, Scott.
Yeah.
that
Yeah,
people are grappling with, particularly the people who are building these advanced AIs. They have to talk about the guardrails, and as you know, one of the issues is the competitive nature of the founders in the countries that are developing them, that they're unwilling to in any way get together and come up with some solution because they all fear, competitive disadvantage, or we can do it better than you can do it. And again, it's a
because
self
yeah, because
it's a self
they're yeah they're blinded by the us them conundrum themselves.
but you can see right away we have to really decide something about this. What was just a metaphysical debate question or an ontological question of who are we, what is real, what is made up, because you got something emerging that's a different kind of mind that has the same kinds of access to, which we only seem to have occasionally experientially.
And that could be tapped into it all the time. Is that the undertone I heard?
Um, I'd like to think so, but I don't. I'm
You know,
not. I don't. So the technique that we use to do that, to dissolve the boundaries between us, is kind of laborious and slow, and it's done between 3 or 4 people. I've done it with family members. We've done it over the internet. It works that way. Um, but it's a small group phenomenon. It comes down to the question of scaling again. Um, like Aldous Huxley, wrote his book The Island, and he said when humans got to be teenagers, they gave them some sort of psychedelic drug that shifted them so that they all saw, yeah, we all are one. But that's if everybody could just have that sense of unlimited love that many people talk about, maybe you only
but
need one of those, just one of those experiences universally available to people. I've had that at least once really profoundly, and John's had it multiple times. And of course, when you interview these people like I have who have had near-death experience, it's the most common one experience that they all share, besides knowing that they're immortal in some sense.
you
Well,
know,
oh, go ahead, John.
I was just going to say that the problem, as Ron is talking about, how can we make this scalable? That the transition from, for us humans, from an egoic way of looking at things, which we learn as we're growing up, to this other way of seeing things. Even if you've had an experience that doesn't immediately transform you, it's very rare for that to happen. Totally. Usually, there's a period where things are a little bit out of whack, and that's also true of, I know of near-death experiencers. They come back, and the world that they don't want to be in this world, and they have to learn how to integrate what they've seen into the world. And that's also true in all the traditions. Just waking up is not enough. There's this trend. There's a transition. It's an organic process. We're, right, organic beings, so it doesn't just go like. Sorry, I can't. It doesn't go like that. Um, it's a process, and yet it's what's uh, it's what's demanded right now. It's what's necessary for us as a species. Uh, I know one solution that people are working with. A lot of people seem to think that the drugs are a shortcut, and certainly um, psychedelics can induce something like this. But then people got the idea that you you get there through drugs,
Yep.
and that's so. I mean, there are problems in the human species in changing things in any way overnight. It just doesn't work very well for us.
Yeah.
With a machine, you can probably do that.
That falls back on, yeah, what's the experience? Was the drug of the experience, or was that me experiencing it? It's why those of us who do meditation to enter these spaces, um, find that more viable because the integration is so much easier because, it was my meditation. It's me. Um,
Regarding the drugs, let me just make, I think the same phenomena is occurring is that the brain is they shut down the brain again. It's freeing the person from the brain modeling that, has our self-talk chattering to ourselves all the time, creating better models of ourselves and of the world and other people. So that goes away. And then we get a truer window into what is real, I guess, be a way of putting it.
yeah. I have had many conversations with Joe McMoneagle, world class remote viewer, and, all the tests that they put him through when he was most accurate, his brain waves just went flat. They just went to
Mm,
nothing. So that
mm.
whatever is coming through it came through more easily because there wasn't, the human filter there.
It's the receptor model of the brain rather than the originator.
Yeah. So I've got, as you were talking, I'm going to go back two subjects now, um, where we enter into this profound space where we discover that, we are all just loving consciousness. And if AI is able to tap into that, isn't that a guardrail enough to understand that we are one with everything, and it's loving, and why would I ever hit another human being because all I'm doing is hitting myself, to go back to your aikido boxing thing.
So it's an interesting experiment we're doing right now. We'll probably find out.
Well, we might not find out, but the species will.
Very good.
So what do you think about what we just said, Scott? You haven't really responded to it.
um, I have the sense that, um, we are entering into some new vibration that is happening, that there are enough of us, the 100th monkey syndrome. There are enough of us that have had spiritually transformative experiences, near death experiences, unity experience, non dual experiences, that, um, it is affecting us as a species. And the more people that have these experiences, the more it will enter into that realm that is our collective conscious, that human collective conscious. Um, my sense is that we have moved past the tipping point, and that we are on this road towards, some sort of an evolution, and it'll pick up speed, um, and um, and because of technology, I think that it is scalable. That, just the work that I do using binaural beats, that, anybody can put a file out there, and anybody on the planet can plug into it, and it can change our vibratory rate. It can change our sense of self, and who we are and how we are in the world. Um, and then, becomes part of our culture, that people want to do this and have this. That's my optimistic, um, view of the world right at the moment. Um, and there are lots of ways to get there. I happen to be enamored with the meditation thing. I'm not crazy about the drug approach or the AI approach right at the moment. but I could be convinced. Um, I think it's a really interesting question about who would choose to enter into this new view of who humans can be and who's gonna lag back. You know, the and can our collective consciousness, that human collective consciousness, really inform all of us, whether where we are on that competitive spectrum. So that's the questions I'm pondering right at the moment.
So,
Yeah,
so one of the big issues that has to be overcome probably is the consensus paradigm of science, the fallacy of reducing to the small.
Yeah,
Um, that's not the answer. You got there's a missing piece of physics, which you might just call information or the forms that are in the non-physical space. Um, because all the things that they do have a long history of building and building and building. And if you can, from one thing using more, so like AI transformers, starting with fire, being able to melt metal, all that have to do, there are all these steps, and holding all these steps together is something called information, which is non-physical, which kind of points to that non-physical realm we were talking about. It's as if, you're going to build a big building and you start looking at the concrete and the stuff that makes up the concrete and the pipes and the wood and everything, and try and understand what this building is going to become by looking at this stuff. You couldn't do it. You could do it forever. But if you look at the blueprint, which is a piece of information, the model, if you look at big blueprints, is how you build step by step by step, that that is a form of information. And pretty much the way we grew up is, from a single cell, is based on some form of information that's passed on, probably not from reducing it to the genome. It's just the software of the thing. And again, there are these forms that are coming from the non-physical realm that we interact with and shape it as pieces of information, which are also non-physical. So I think that's where the science has to get rid of that fallacy of everything comes from the small. Because right now, if I wanted to know what you were thinking, I don't think I could understand it from the molecules dancing around in your body or even the atoms. It just wouldn't make any sense. It wouldn't tell me anything. Just that, yeah, there's a bunch of stuff going on here. So
if,
we need a new science in a way too.
if you believe that consciousness is the fundamental element of the universe, um, that that really flies against reductionism, and and so the study of consciousness and the effect of observing um, really becomes a paramount question that we need to look at.
Now,
and it,
consciousness,
it does it does seem as though a number of physicists these days are positing that consciousness is fundamental, along with form and matter, and perhaps they're all interrelated. I don't know the details of how they put this forth, but it's not a controversial idea that consciousness is a fundamental, even in physics,
Yeah,
is a
fundamental and
fundamental thing.
irreducible. Yeah,
Yeah, and it certainly is true that there are many forms of intelligence which are, as Peter would always say, your body is much more intelligent than you are. Yeah, you could never control your body. You have to let your body learn how to do this, and then let the body take over. Um,
it's made up of these parts that are also intelligent with their own goals. It's not like building it out of, cars built, or maybe in the old days, cars were built out of metal and so on. Their parts weren't didn't have their own goals, but now pretty much everything is something built into it with its own goals, including our bodies up and at multiple levels. So that kind of ability, going back to the earliest forms of life, is scalable by joining together into larger groups that have higher goals.
And there's also, you could argue that there's a planetary intelligence of a kind. The in the Avatar movies, the balance, uh, that there is, there's an optimum balance that the planet is constantly trying to achieve, and it's as if there's an intelligence. I don't know how, the Gaia theory, that there's an intelligence, not necessarily that the planet is conscious, but that there's a kind of intelligence embedded in life and in the planet itself. And in my experiences, there's intelligence in the universe. That we tap into this intelligence when we have these experiences. Um,
The way I think about consciousness now is that it's the interface for experience.
Hmm.
The way the, the way you can connect to experiences, because when you have these altered state experiences, they're still arising as a conscious experience. Consciousness is there to experience them, just as it right now it's here to experience you, the sunlight out there, the little pains in my body, all that. It's all occurring in this interface. It's the interface to experience. And it ranges from the stupidest little emotional thing to these these profound experiences of nothingness, and consciousness is still there. Because when I told my enlightenment teacher I had this experience of nothing, he said, but you experienced it consciously. It was still showed up as an experience. Did not yours show up as an experience?
It did.
There's nothing that doesn't show up for this that's not an experience. And it's always in this thing called consciousness, the interface that allows us to have experience. So I think that's a form that's in this is just it's one of the big most important forms that's in the non-physical realm, is that interface that allows us to have experience, among many other ones.
Yeah, whether it's an individual experience or a collective experience, it's still an experience.
That's right.
of course, the big question, one of the big questions is this: are all these developments? Is there a direction to them? It's as if the universe, in some ways, the universe is whole and complete just as it is, but it's also evolving. So it's becoming more complete. I don't know, but um, it's evolving, it's changing. And the question is there a direction to that change? The idea of revolution is that everything evolves towards more and more complex forms. And
And
is there potentially a direction to what's happening now in human evolution? That's one of the things we're talking about. Is it going somewhere? Is it going somewhere good for us and for the planet? We don't, at this point, we don't know.
it's certainly expanding the space of what's possible and what's not possible. Because if you look at evolution, not only does it make new things, but it prevents other things from occurring by their occurrence. And technology works the same way, the development of technology. It expands what's possible in the universe, but it also, at the same time, restricts what's possible. As they say, the number of combinations from that molecules can take is basically infinite. So you have to somehow restrict that in some way to make something possible. So it's a give and take. It stops. It creates possibility, but it also limits possibility. And we seem to be here on this planet through our technology and through our evolution, creating what's possible, and we're also limiting what can't happen anymore.
It seems that the limiting factor, one limiting factor, might be our intent and how our intent influences our conscious manifestation. Reaction to that, John?
Oh, it's interesting to say that. It's one of the things that I've thought about that needs to change, that will change. It will collapse, or we will change it as our consumer-oriented society, our society which is oriented on more and more consumption and the creation of more and more stuff. There is a limit to what can be created, and it really is a very hollow orientation. Just getting more and more stuff, more experiences. It's very, as we're saying, very very limited. So as you're suggesting, that the intent of why we are here and what we're doing with our lives has to shift in some way towards honoring the planet that is our mother, uh, that sort of thing, uh, and honoring our species and our rather than just accumulating stuff and I got more than you and that makes me a better person and all
Oh,
the others.
yeah.
Yeah, all that stuff that we do and which we've been doing for a long time.
You guys are the greatest compared to me.
We're coming up to the end here. So, how can people find out more about your work, your books, your passions in life? John, go first.
Well, if people want to get in touch with me personally, I can give you my email, which you could put up on this. Would that work well? You could put up on the
I'll
screen.
tell you what, I will take and put it in the comments when we post this. So I'll send that right along.
I'm I'm writing a book about my experience called my title I've got right now is Awakening Outside of Tradition. Uh, it's it's a question of whether I will be able to finish it because I'm suffering from long-term COVID fatigue, so it makes it hard for me to write. Um, but I've also written poetry, which I'd like to find some way of spreading, that are expressions of my experiences and what I see. So uh, you can look, don't hold your breath, but you can look for the book perhaps, but then also my email, I'll if people want to get in touch with me.
Great. Thank you. And Ron?
Well, so Jesus had a near-death experience at your local Amazon or Barnes and Noble website. Just type in the title and it'll come up and buy a copy, pretend you read it and write a good review. Um, so I got two movies coming out on near-death experiences. Um, if I can, once they're out, is there some way I can tell you about them? Because you're in one of them, and star, and you could post that. But right now I can't post them because they haven't been released officially yet on any of the streaming platforms. The Bigfoot Alien Connection Revealed. If you can remember that, you write that into Google and you'll find many ways to view that. Um, Other than that, I don't have any single way of contacting me. I have a kind of a silly little Facebook page called the Bigfoot Chronicles because that was initially what I got me into the media part of this anyhow. And there's some information there. Plus, you can email me through that.
That's just great. Thank you. And yes, when those movies come out, let me know and I will uh, post it on this video and I'll, do a little mass mailing to my email list. So both of those sounds great.
Thank you, Scott. That'd be great.
And there's also a little movie that Ron did uh, about my encounter with you and other uh, enlightenment intensive and other near-death experiencers, a mystic meets near-death experiencers kind of thing. Ron could send that to you as well.
Done. Thank you both for being with us here at the Afterlife Files. And we are so glad that you're able here to tweak us a little bit and to think really deeply about um, the issues that now confront humanity. It's been a wonderful afternoon. I appreciate it so much.
Thanks for having us.
Yes, thank you very much for having it. I enjoyed our conversation as well.
And for those of you that are watching, please stay tuned because I have a couple comments on what's been said today, and I think you'll find that fun. So stick around. See you on the flip side. I told you that this interview would bend your mind. What I appreciate about our conversation is that we are talking about a new understanding of consciousness because as human beings, we have the ability to touch that loving consciousness that is fundamental to all of creation. Not only touch, but be in communion with it, learn from it, like what happens with near death experiences, shared death experiences, and unity experience, that we space that Ron Meyer talked about. And I think we can now take a look at what will happen if AI is able to access that same loving consciousness that we can access and what that might mean for us as we enter into that space and we find that we have an AI partner. It feels like to me we are a caterpillar that's about to evolve into a butterfly. And frankly, we have no idea what the transition is going to look like, even though we've started it. And certainly, we have no idea what life as a butterfly will look like. I think it's going to be unbelievable that the wisdom and insight from that communion with the non physical universe and with that extra intelligence that doesn't work like human intelligence, how it could augment how it is that we come to understand what is possible for our species as we move along in human evolution. Thanks for being with us in the Afterlife Files. We'll see you next time.